Hello, everybody. I am Judy Maddox. I am chair of our WNC Sierra Club, formerly known as Winoka. We are part of our National Sierra Club and our State Sierra Club, and our motto is to explore, enjoy, and protect the planet. And of course, tonight you have tuned in to talk with our Ken Brame is going to talk with you about the election and the environment. We want to acknowledge the respect that the land that we are on today is ancestral land of the Cherokee. We thank them for protecting our forests and our environment for so many generations. I want to update you. Many of you know that we have been trying very hard to get a single-use plastic bag ban and styrofoam takeout ban. And Nashville City Council is bringing up the discussion on this very timely topic this Thursday, October 11th. We very much want a huge turnout, and we want every one of you please to write to the Asheville City Council members and to the mayor. The email is right there. It's also on our website. And it's just Asheville NC Council at asheville.nc.gov. And to ask them, please pass it now. 63 million bags are distributed every year in Asheville. And as you guys know, a lot of them wind up in the river and everywhere, and certainly the landfill is becoming to the point where it's getting to be full. So we would love for you to go participate, stand up when you're asked to stand up, and if you're willing to speak. We're going to meet at Pack Tavern at 5 and talk about talking points, but we'd love to have you there whether you talk or not, and please write an email. There will be another program on climate change and environmental resiliency, again presented by Ken Brame and by Deke Arnett of NOAA, and that will be with Leadership Asheville Forum this Wednesday at 5:30. It will also have small group facilitated discussions. So please go to LAF and register by this Sunday if you would like to join. If you know PAPA, and we certainly have been supporting PAPA, Preserving a Picturesque America, for years and years, the art on Chimney Rock Art is going to be on sale Friday this next weekend, October 14th to the 16th, and the focus is Hickory Nut Gap Gorge and Chimney Rock. It will be at Burnt Shirt Vineyards, which will be Chimney Rock, North Carolina, 438 Main. And the artists will have a reception Friday, October 14th from 6 to 9. The proceeds will go to support the Chimney Rock and Carolina Climbers Coalition to preserve the area. Our next online program will be All Creatures Great and Small, highlighting the diversity of our wonderful North Carolina. You know, we are one of the most diverse in the entire world. We have more salamanders than anybody, and what we can do to keep it that way. The registration link is on our website, wnccsierraclub.org. Please join us. Rachel Muir will be presenting. It's always the first Thursday of the month, and right now it continues to be on Zoom. And now turning to election, volunteers are needed, guys, and I'm sure all of you have participated in the past. We have endorsed our candidates all the way up and down the ballot, and we have early voting sites at 12 locations throughout the county and the city. It will be just in 2 weeks from today, October 20th, for 2 weeks through November the 5th. We have 3 shifts a day, and that includes and adds election day, November 8th. So if you will please go to our website, wnccsierraclub.org, The endorsements are also listed on our political page of our website. If you will please hand out cards, and as people walk up to vote, if you will acknowledge to them, hey, do you know the judges? Most people only know one or two or very few people and don't vote the entire ballot. And that makes a huge difference. And you also need to acknowledge to them that we have a bond issue, and that would be for affordable housing and for preserving our farmland and our parks, our greenways. So we need to have people know to vote the entire ballot. And now let me introduce to you Ken Brame, political chair of Western North Carolina. He is going to talk about the election and the environment, asking you to please not raise your hand, just put your questions in chat, and we will present them to Ken at the very end. And there's no closing deadline, so you're welcome to stay as long as you would like. So Ken, if you will take it away.
All right.
Are you having technical difficulties?
I'm needing to get the screen shared here, so give me just a second.
Okay.
Close out a bunch of stuff here, so bear with me. Are you seeing it now?
It's yes. And if
Okay,
you
good.
full screen, that would be
Yep.
good.
Yep, that's next. Second here.
Let me also ask you, as you enter, if you will please go dark and mute yourself, that would be wonderful.
My apologies, folks. Hang in there for just a second. We'll get there. All right, seeing full screen now?
No.
Yes.
So it's not showing a full screen on yours, Judy.
No, actually, it is not.
Okay, so I need to figure out why it's showing on mine and not yours. Hang on a second. Are you seeing the screen at all?
I am seeing the screen.
Okay. Let me come back and go back to my. Are you seeing it now?
I am seeing a small screen. It's not taking the full page, full screen.
Well, that's not good because it's showing that on mine. I'm gonna.
But
take a
I think it's okay, Ken. You can go with what you've got.
Okay, well, good. Well, when we're really looking ahead at this election, the question is, are we going to move forward or are we going to move backwards on environmental protection? And that is a challenge and a question that we've got to ask as we move forward. All right. Okay, let's look back for just a second and say, what happened in 2020? We had some remarkable victories. We had and nationally, we elected a pro-environmental president in Congress, and we've seen some of the advantages of that and some of the things that we've been able to accomplish with the climate bill that just recently passed. And in North Carolina, we elected a pro-environmental governor, an attorney general, and a general assembly that was able to maintain and sustain vetoes of the governor. So that was important. We get all of that done. So that was pretty exciting stuff. And then Buncombe County, all of our endorsed candidates won. All 4 of our General Assembly candidates won. All 4 of our County Commission candidates won. And all of our City Council candidates won. So Sierra Club was very pleased, and we elected a lot of good environmental candidates. We also had some fundraising success. Again, we look forward to what the Sierra Club did. We raised $180,000 for our North Carolina PAC for the elections. Over 70% of that was raised in Buncombe County. And we focused all of that money on winnable and critical races. We were able to make $90,000 in direct contributions to our endorsed candidates. We were able to deploy 2 full-time organizers for 8 weeks prior to the elections in key targeted districts. We also had an organizer for a special congressional election in the 9th district in 2019 as well. Boots on the ground in critical districts. We called and mailed over 100,000 potential environmental voters in targeted areas. We texted over 16,000 voters. We ran targeted Facebook ads that reached over 200,000 people. And we printed and distributed over 60,000 North Carolina Sierra Club endorsement cards for distribution at the polls. Half of those were distributed here in Buncombe County. And so what have we gained by electing good people? Well, let's take a look here and see some of the things we gained. First of all, we're able to defend, again, governor's veto power provided a backstop against extreme bills, particularly rolling back environmental protections and things like that. Because of our 4-3 majority on the state Supreme Court, we were able to overturn badly gerrymandered districts because they were ruled to be that gerrymandering in extreme was unconstitutional in North Carolina. And it made a difference on whether or not we had, like in the state, for Congress, instead of having 4 potential Democratic districts and 9 Republican districts, the new lines provide for a potential 7 or 50% split, which is right in line with how North Carolina votes. But that would not have happened without the legislature. They also returned the state legislative maps that were similarly extreme gerrymandered and got those redone. So Duke Energy wanted to have carte blanche to raise our rates without having to go back each year and apply for that. They wanted to have multi-year rate making, and we were able to defeat that because of our having our majority, our ability to sustain vetoes. The big victory, though, was House Bill 951, with the legislature passed after negotiations with the governor that actually took a bad bill that Duke tried to pass, got changed pretty dramatically. And the one that was passed calls for a 70% reduction in CO2 emissions from power plants by 2030 from 2005 levels. And that's amazing, and puts us in line with not only meeting the Paris Climate Accords, but potentially being slightly ahead of those. So that's huge. The legislature approved some good Public Utilities Commission appointments. And Public Utilities Commission appointments are critical. We'll talk a little bit more about that, how important they are here in a minute. But the reason that is important is because this House Bill 951 calls on the Public Utilities Commission to develop a plan that would help meet that 70% goal. And Duke has proposed something that doesn't meet the goal and keeps coal plants going and things like that. The Public Utilities Commission has the ability to adopt a good plan. There was a bill to allow spraying of landfill waste up into the air, and that was vetoed by the governor, and that veto was sustained. There was a bill to loosen billboard laws, including allowing more digital billboards and taking away the ability for local governments to regulate those. Again, that was vetoed by the governor, and that veto was sustained. And there was a bill that would have limited local governments' ability from limiting frack gas infrastructure. And unnecessarily limiting public records. And again, that was vetoed and sustained because we were able to elect enough people to sustain his vetoes. So those were some of the victories, and many of those were defensive, but one was very positive in terms of the Public Utilities Commission and the House Bill 951. So it's fruits of our labor. So what are some of the critical elections that we're looking at this year? So much for looking backwards, but let's look at this fall and what's at stake, because the stakes couldn't be higher. And we've got a big challenge. While the majority of voters are concerned about climate change, the deniers are the most reliable voters. And unfortunately, voters who say climate change is important tend to vote less frequently and often and don't vote down ballot. So we have our work cut out for us to try to overcome those trends for this election. But we have the ability with the Sierra Club and other environmental organizations to leverage our time and our money, but our power is in our volunteers. I wish I could say we had millions and millions of dollars to spend on elections. We don't, but the good news is we have thousands of volunteers that we can mobilize and show up to hand out endorsement cards and make phone calls and let their friends know who to vote for. So what about nationally? Well, the Senate is probably the one that's getting a lot of certainly airtime in North Carolina right now. But right now there's a 50-50 split in the U.S. Senate, and the Vice President Harris is able to give the Democrats a majority, which means that judicial appointments can be voted on, that things like the climate action bill that just passed could pass. But that 50-50 split will really depend on who's in charge on races in 6 states. There are 3 Democratic held seats that are going to be very close races, one in Nevada, one in Georgia, and one in Arizona. And then there are 3 Republican held seats that are at risk of changing hands this time: Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and our own North Carolina. And how those come out will determine who controls Congress for the next 2 years, and whether anything environmentally can be done, or whether we'll simply be having to depend on vetoes to defeat bad stuff. In the U.S. House, currently the Democrats have a 6-vote majority, but that majority is at a pretty big risk due to extreme gerrymandering, particularly in Texas and Florida, where there was extreme gerrymandering. So right now, we'd say the precautioners are saying that there's a slight tilt towards the Democrats to hold the Senate, and a slight favor of the Republicans to take back the U.S. House, but both could go either way. So that's what to watch. And if you want to watch the Senate, those are the 6 races to pay attention to. And there's probably about 30 or 40 out of 400 and something seats in the U.S. House that are actually in play this time around. So those will be the critical seats to watch. What about North Carolina? Well, North Carolina, we have one of the most competitive U.S. Senate races in the country. As I mentioned before, we're one of 6 most likely to change or to be competitive. So that race will be absolutely worth watching. And if we can win that one in North Carolina with our endorsed candidate, Sherry Beasley, it will probably mean that we will maintain control of pro-environmental majority in the U.S. Senate. So critical race. Redrawn congressional districts. We have the opportunity to replace 2 anti-environmental incumbents in at least 2 districts in North Carolina. So we could go from having 5 pro-environmental congressmen to 7, depending on some close races to keep your eye on. Certainly in the state General Assembly, maintaining the ability to sustain the governor's veto of bad bills is absolutely critical. And that's very close. If we lose 2 state Senate seats and 3 state House seats, then the governor's vetoes can be overridden, and we'll be back to basically a one-party rule in North Carolina. And when that happened before, it was not good for the environment. A lot of bad bills got passed. So winning those, protecting the current incumbents and picking up some additional seats in the state House and Senate is going to be absolutely critical. And one of those seats we can't afford to lose is here in Buncombe County. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, which one that was. Judicial races, North Carolina Supreme Court. 2 of the 7 total seats are on the ballot. In the North Carolina Court of Appeals, 4 out of 15 seats are on the ballot. But what does that mean? There's currently a 4-3 pro-democracy majority on the court. And 2 of those 4 seats are up this year. And if either one loses, we lose the majority, which means that extreme gerrymandering will be back. There'll be nothing will be out. I mean, there really will be no checks and balances at the state Supreme Court level on anything the legislature does. But we've got 2 really strong candidates, Lucy Inman and Sam Ervin, who are running for those 2 seats. And it's absolutely critical we elect those because those people are elected for 8 years. So if we lose control, it could be in a long period of time before we could regain control, and a lot of bad things can happen. And in particular, extreme gerrymandering would no longer be unconstitutional. Discriminating voting restrictions would be allowed, and unconstitutional anti-environmental legislation would be allowed. So these are 2 races that aren't on people's radar that are absolutely critical for this fall. North Carolina Court of Appeals, the Republicans currently have a 10-5 majority, and the current majority ruled that extreme gerrymandering was constitutional and was okay, and voted to accept the extreme gerrymandered districts the legislature drew. If our 4 endorsed Court of Appeals candidates win, we can regain the majority. So again, we can block things at that level. So again, important races where the control of that Court of Appeals is up for grabs this election as well. So races that most people don't think about, but that are very important here in North Carolina. So what about Western North Carolina? First, let's look at the U.S. House District 11. Jasmine Beach Ferrara is our endorsed candidate. She's running against Chuck Edwards, a former state senator or a state senator from Hendersonville. It's a lean Republican district, but Jasmine's running a really hard campaign, doing a lot of door-to-door. And so she's optimistic she can pull that race out, but it's going to be a difficult race. It's a very clear choice, though. There's an environmental champion. Jasmine has been an environmental champion on the Buncombe County Commission, voted to help them when they adopted their 100% renewable goals, has voted to fund solar panels on schools, and has voted for every environmental initiative coming before County Commission. Her opponent, on the other hand, Chuck Edwards, has a lifetime score of 5, and that's 5 out of 100, not 1 through 5. So he is one of the lowest. So he votes wrong in the environment almost every time his entire career in the North Carolina State Senate. In the state Senate and State House, you're going to look for a lot of change this year. Julie Mayfield is our endorsed candidate running for state senator, and that should be a safe district for her. She's been a real environmental champion, and we're excited to have endorsed her again. In the State House, we're going to have all new State House members. For a long time, we had Susan Fisher, who had been in office for almost 20 years. We had John Ager and Brian Turner, who had been in office for a number of years, and they all 3 chose not to run again. Susan Fisher actually stepped down in January, and Caleb Rudow was appointed to fill her seat, and he's running for a full term this fall. Eric Ager, who represents the area that's Swannanoa, Black Mountain, kind of that whole area down that way. And he's the son of John Ager, owners of Hickory Nut Gap Farm. And we really enjoyed interviewing him in the questionnaire. He will be a staunch environmental partner for us. Caleb Rudow is already voting well in the legislature. And again, we had a great interview with him, a great questionnaire. And I'm absolutely convinced he's going to pick up right where Susan Fisher left off and be just as green. And Lindsay Prather is running for, and Caleb's seat is North Asheville up through Weaverville and out through Leicester and that area and all the way up north to Madison County. So that's that district. Lindsay Prather is the candidate that's most at risk. She's replacing one of our longtime champions there, and that district is a very competitive district, and it's one where she's going to have to work hard to win. We're going to have to work hard to help her win because we cannot afford to lose that seat and maintain our veto-proof majority. I mean, our ability to sustain vetoes in the North Carolina legislature. She's a great, exciting candidate, former school teacher, works for UNCA now, a ball of energy. And she and Caleb are both in their 30s. Eric is early 40s. So we got a whole new generation of people that will be representing us for Buncombe County. And when we had our old delegation, I used to brag to my friends, Sierra Club friends around the state, that we had the most green delegation of anybody in Raleigh. And I'm absolutely convinced when we elect these three, we'll do the same thing for the next decade. So it's really important that we get Lindsay in particular, that we make sure she doesn't lose in this and lose that seat. Up in Haywood, Madison County, Josh Remillard is our endorsed candidate. That's a tougher district. It's a Republican leaning district, but he's working for it. He's got a military background and he's running as a veteran. And so hopefully he'll be able to pull off an upset there. And then down in Transylvania, Jackson and Swain County, Al Platt, a longtime architect there, well-known in the community, has done a tremendous amount for land conservation, is running, and he's probably the strongest candidate we could have in that district. But again, it's a tough district, and it's going to need a lot of, we have to get a lot of voter turnout, but hopefully he can also pull off an upset. But again, Lindsay Prather's district is one of the 25 most competitive General Assembly races in North Carolina. And Sierra Club is going to be targeting that district with our staffing election polls and handing out cards and trying to help her get elected. And we're already given her a $2,000 contribution from the North Carolina Sierra Club PAC. So we're going to do everything we can to make sure she wins. Well, let's kind of move on here. Buncombe County Commission. We've got two great incumbents running, Al Whitesides and Amanda Edwards, who we've endorsed in the past and who have great records on Buncombe County Commission. They're both running in relatively safe districts. Martin Moore is running against an incumbent Republican who has not been good on the environment. And it again is a very competitive race. The district exactly overlaps Lindsay Prather's district. So both of those will be campaigning to win toss-up districts or very competitive districts. So we're gonna have to work hard to get Martin elected also along with Lindsay. Asheville City Council, we've endorsed three good incumbents. Mayor Esther Manheimer has been a real leader on the environment when they moved. She was a leader when the city adopted their 100% renewable goals. She's been a leader in getting the city to put solar on some of their buildings. She has not only been a leader locally on environmental issues, but she has used her leadership role in the state with other mayors to get them to do good things, to get them to take positions on environmental legislation, and signed on to Mayors for 100% Renewable, signed on for mayors in support of the climate accords, has done basically everything we've asked her to do. Shanika Smith is vice mayor. She's also had a good voting record in her 4 years on council. Annette Mosley was appointed about 2 years ago, and her voting record has been good. And she's been one of our leaders to try to ban plastic bags. And the third candidate for city council for an open seat, Gwen Whistler is not running for re-election, is Maggie Ullman. And Maggie is amazing. She was the City of Asheville's first sustainability director. And during her time, 7 years doing that, the city made amazing progress on reducing its carbon footprint, reducing its carbon usage. And she's also an international climate consultant as her day job now after leaving the city. And she will not only be good on her issues, she will be the environmental leader on Asheville City Council, which we really haven't had somebody that's their primary passion since Julie Mayfield left council to run for Senate. So getting Maggie elected is going to be absolutely critical to accomplishing many of the things we want to do in the city of Asheville and keeping the strong pro-environmental other candidates that we've endorsed as well. Another race you probably are not familiar with is soil and water supervisor. And that's a position that's a very low profile, but they really work a lot with state, regional, and local organizations and governmental entities to how we spend money, how we protect farmland, how do we protect streams, wastewater, things like that. And we've got two really great candidates. Anthony Cole is a former employee for the State Department of Agriculture, and he is so knowledgeable of the issue. He's a farmer out in Leicester, So he knows how to talk with farmers, how to deal with farmers to get things done. Sarah Nichols, again, another young candidate from Weaverville, who again worked for the Land of Sky Regional Council and was absolutely a leader and very knowledgeable in environmental issues. And both of those are very committed to reducing the county's carbon footprint any way they can through agriculture and protecting our water and other things. So we need to make sure people remember to vote for those two. It's a nonpartisan race. There's 2 openings and 2 candidates. And I'm sorry, we have 2 openings and there are 5 candidates running. And these people would just be fantastic in that role. But people, because they're not Democrat or Republicans, tend to skip them. So that's why handing out our endorsement cards to let people know these are the environmental candidates is really important in that down ballot race. And lastly, locally, there's on our ballots are going to be Buncombe County bonds initiatives. And they'll be on the back of the ballot, the very last thing people vote on. And one is an open space bond that would provide $30 million in money to help in conserving farmland easements and purchasing land for more greenways, for protecting scenic views and things like that. And the affordable housing bond would be 40 million. And again, its goal, the city's goal is to add 3,000 units of housing that average workers can afford, school teachers could afford to buy or to rent in. And so that's a critical need right now. And the good news is all of these monies, this $70 million, will be leveraged with private money, with grants, with government money to make that worth $150 or $200 million worth of benefits when leveraged with other money. And I'll give a great example of the open space bonds, how that money can be used. You may be familiar with the Greenway and Blueway project, 5 miles of Greenway up in a park in Woodfin. And we were able to take 20 million, we were able to take, that was a total $30 million project, and 20 million of that was private funding and government funding, and the rest was leveraged with federal grants, state grants to raise the rest. And we can do the same with these open space and housing bonds. So an opportunity to vote, and most people don't know those are on the ballot. So again, handing out our endorsement cards can help get the message out that these are good. But number 2, you talking to your friends and people you know and letting them know this is on the ballot and how important it is that we get these passed. So again, what's the Sierra Club doing this fall to make a difference? Well, we're going to spend close to $150,000 to elect environmental candidates this fall in the most competitive races in North Carolina. We've targeted the top 20, 25 state legislative races, state House, state Senate races, the state Supreme Court and Court of Appeals, and some of our local races. And that's where our money's going. You know, we're not, as much as I love Caleb and Eric, they have safe districts. As much as we love Julie Mayfield, she's got a safe district. We're not spending our money there. We're putting it where it can make the biggest difference. And we're giving direct contributions anywhere from $1,000 to $2,500 to all of these targeted candidates. We're funding full-time organizers to mobilize volunteers. And we're focusing on mailing our endorsement cards. Oops, I bounced forward here. But anyway, we're going to be mailing out endorsement cards to 60,000. Back up, get that slide back here. Yep. Here we go. Yeah, we're going to be sending out and emailing our endorsements to 60,000 plus members and supporters households, and plus spending money on digital outreach as we did before. So reaching out and trying to leverage those. So how can you help? Let your friends know about our endorsed candidates, know how to request an absentee ballot, let them know when early voting starts on the 20th of this month. Let them know that if they're not registered or if they've moved, they can show up at early voting and register and vote at the same time. They simply need to bring something that's got an ID that would identify them, a driver's license, student ID card, something that identifies who they are, and something that shows their name and their address on it, so that people know they actually live there. It could be a utility bill, anything that's got their name and their address on it would work. And they can register and vote or change their address right then. You can email, you can text, you can call. You can forward the Sierra Club endorsement core list to your friends and neighbors. And most of all, make sure they vote. That's the critical part. We've got to get voter turnout is the key in an off-year election. And we always struggle to get pro-environmental voters out to vote. We need to get young people out in numbers, large numbers to vote. And the stakes couldn't be higher than before. You can email, you can text, you can call. And you can hand out our Sierra Club endorsement cards. 8% of voters don't vote down ballot. They'll vote at the top of the ticket. And this year, there's so much advertising, so much information out there about the Senate race. Many people are going to show up. I don't expect anybody to show up not knowing who they're going to vote for U.S. Senate between Beasley and her opponent. And probably, higher profile races, Congress, they'll probably know that as well. But when it gets down to soil and water, voting bonds, county commission, judicial races in particular, people don't know, so they leave them blank. And I will give you an example. In 2016, we had a very close state Supreme Court race. And our endorsed candidate won by 2,000 votes statewide, 2,000 votes statewide. And in Buncombe County, because of our strong program of handing out our endorsement cards, we have a much lower drop off between the top of the ballot and the bottom of the ballot than the rest of the state, usually about half the rate the rest of the state. And that extra 4% of people voting in 2016 in that race got our candidate more votes than he needed to win statewide. So Buncombe County can absolutely make a difference in statewide races by handing out our endorsement cards. And why our endorsement cards? Democrats are handing out theirs, Republicans are handing out theirs. The majority of the largest group of voters in Buncombe County and across our state are unaffiliated voters. Many of those people don't trust Democrats. They don't trust Republicans. They won't accept their cards. They won't accept the Republican card or the Democratic card, but they'll take our cards. And we've got it down to the point where people will seek us out and say, "Oh, I'm glad you're here. I was looking for you. I always get your card to help you know how to vote." So it really can make a difference, but it only works if we have volunteers to do it. So keep that in mind as you hear our pleas for volunteering to help us out doing that. Okay. So the other thing you've got to do, we ask you to do, is to vote your entire ballot. Use your Sierra Club endorsed candidate card. How do you find it? You go to WNCSierraClub.org and you can click on the political link and it will take you to our endorsed candidates. So that way you can find those, you can copy them, you can then forward them on to your friends and make sure that they know who to vote for. And you can take it in with you to vote just in case we didn't have a volunteer on the day when you go to vote. So we ask you to do that. So in summary, whoops, that should say 2022 elections. Sorry about that. I missed something when I was changing an old slide presentation. The stakes are high. They're high nationally, they're high statewide, and they're high locally. North Carolina has a proven track record to plan, and we leverage the power of our volunteers, and that means you. We need you to be that volunteer we leverage to make a difference. So how do you volunteer? Well, we need 250 volunteers to cover early voting. Early voting runs from the October 20th through November 5th, and then on election day, November 8th. In particular, election day, we need a lot of voters because we have a lot of places to cover. So how do you volunteer? Again, you go to WNCSierraClub.org. You click on volunteer at the polls to sign up, to hand out our cards, and there'll be a schedule, and you can go through and say, "Yep, I'm available for this shift. I'm not available for that one." And you can sign up, as Judy would say, for as many shifts as you want to take. We can use you. And that's the key, people doing more than one shift. But we really need you to sign up to help us for that. You can also contact our super organizer, Judy Maddox, with questions. And her by email, it's judymaddox15@gmail. judymaddox15@gmail. So I'm going to stop talking for a minute and let me ask questions. Judy, do we have any questions? Judy is muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good. Thank you. That was very informative. Our first comment, Ken, is about how to donate money. And one of the recommendations that you see in front of you is to donate money to the Supreme Court Justice candidate Lucy Inman. But Ken, how, again, would you state how the money that's donated to the Sierra Club Political Action Committee, how that money is spent and targeted?
Yes. The we basically, in our endorsement process, we send out questionnaires, we look at voting records, we interview people, and so we know who the good environmental candidates are. So we've done that work for you. But the second thing we do is that we work with a lot of organizations around the state that are insiders, political consultants, things like that. We look at, and we have access to polling, financial, quality of candidates, and we're able to take all of that intelligence and we focus in on the 20 or to 25 most competitive state house, state senate, and judicial races, so that we know that money that goes from the Sierra Club PAC is going to the candidates that need it most and where it can make the biggest difference. And so if you want to make a donation to the North Carolina Sierra Club PAC, there's a couple ways to do it. You can go to the North Carolina Sierra Club chapter. If you Google North Carolina Sierra Club chapter and go to their and click on their political page, then there'll be a way, there'll be a link to make a donation to the North Carolina Sierra Club PAC online. Also, if you email Judy or I, either one, and Judy's email was on there, we can send you that link. We can also send you how to make out a check if you want to contribute by check, and we'll make sure that that money then goes to our critical candidates. So that's the way to do it. And certainly Lindsay Prather locally, you can go to her website and she would love to have a donation to help her campaign.
So question, Ken, what about the candidate running for state senator in the eastern half of the county?
Good question. Why didn't we endorse somebody in Senate District 19? That district, unfortunately, has been gerrymandered to the point to where it is virtually impossible for a pro-environmental candidate to win that district. And so we chose not to make an endorsement there simply because of the lack of competitiveness of that district. I wish it were different. I hope as Buncombe County's population gains that we can start to change that. But for now, it just wasn't a race that was going to be competitive. So we focused our time and attention on the races that we could make a bigger difference. There was no incumbent.
The Environmental Voting Project uses volunteers to target potential voters sympathetic to environmental goals. Just informational note. Can we comment about the Duke Energy carbon plan that was presented?
Yes.
And they were, and explain that they were under a mandate or law.
Yeah, this law that I talked about, we were one of our big successes for passing House Bill, I think it was 981, requires the Public Utilities Commission to come up with a carbon reduction goal of 70% from 2005 levels by 2030. And what the public utilities did is they gave Duke the first cut at coming up with a proposed plan. The plan Duke came up with, first of all, didn't meet the 2030 goal. It was going to be 2032 or possibly later. And it proposed building new gas-powered plants and keeping their coal plants operating and not making the investments in solar and wind that they need to make the transition to clean energy for the long term. The bad news about building a gas-powered plant right now, those have a 30-year lifespan. And so if one's built now as part of this plan, then we're in real trouble. The good news is there's a coalition of clean energy companies and environmental organizations put together a competing proposal that would meet our 2030 goal for less money, and also would be far more renewable energy, would call for the retirement of the coal plants much sooner. And we're encouraging the Public Utilities Commission to adopt that plan or one that's far better and reject Duke's plan. There were public hearings. We had over 50 people show up at the public hearing here in Asheville. when I left, we'd had 50 speakers, and all of those were turning thumbs down on Duke's plan and asking the Public Utilities Commission to adopt a much better plan. There's now more technical presentations going on with the Public Utilities Commission to present the new alternate proposals. In addition to that, since that bill was passed and since Duke submitted their plan, we've passed this climate bill at the national level, which provides a ton of money to help utilities convert and transition to clean energy. So knowing that, that's even more reason why Duke's original plan is inadequate. So it's probably more than you wanted to know, but stay tuned, and hopefully the Public Utilities Commission will come out with a really good plan.
Could you elaborate more on that ton of money that you're talking about from the inflation bill? I mean, how that would impact transportation, electric vehicles, just the whole.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sorry I don't have my notes in front of me here on that, but it really provides a huge source of funding over the next 8 years to help our transition as a country to clean energy and reduce our carbon footprint. And it does it in a number of ways. It helps provide money to transition utilities. They're going to have to, for example, upgrade their transmission lines. They need transmission lines, not just from a coal plant to a city, but they need it from maybe out in the rural areas where the solar farms are, the wind farms are, to go to the city. So they have to use some of that money to revamp that. They can use that money to offset some of the cost of going solar, and that for battery storage. There's money to help with battery storage and solar new product development and research. There's money in it for a huge number of charging stations. There's money in that bill to provide tax credits for new electric car and plug-in hybrid purchases. There's some caveats there that it needs to be assembled in the U.S. So it may take us a little while to get to where we have more options to make that happen. There's money to really give you credits for buying a more energy efficient cooktop, to buy a more energy efficient appliance or a heat pump. You get tax credits for that, which brings the cost of those, making that transition down. So there's just a wide range of ways that this can help us reach our climate reduction goals. It's a huge, huge step, one that, quite frankly, many of us weren't sure we'd ever see, but it happened.
Could you comment on the outcome of this election, perhaps opening up third-party solar or community solar, and explain what those two terms mean?
Sure. I'm going to start with community solar because there's actually money in the bill that Congress passed that I was referring to earlier to support community solar. And community solar, for example, if you live in an apartment complex, if you live in a house like ours that's got 50, 60 foot, 80-year-old trees that you don't want to cut down in order to be able to get enough sunlight to put solar on your roof, but you want to participate in the transition to solar energy, you can buy into a community solar farm and get credit against your bill for the energy produced from that community solar farm. So in fact, quite frankly, done right, it's a more cost-effective way than even putting solar on your own rooftop to get more bang for the buck. So that's what community solar is. Third-party solar is something, we're one of 3 states in the US that doesn't allow third-party solar. So what is third-party solar? You know, we all pay, I'm gonna pick a number at random here, let's say we pay 9 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity at our homes right now to Duke Energy. Under third-party, so many people would love to be solar, but they can't afford the upfront cost. It's just cost prohibitive to do that. And so, and they're nervous about maintaining it and stuff. But third-party solar is a situation where a company will come in and they will say, okay, if you will sign a 25-year contract, we will put solar on your roof and we will sell you the energy for 7 cents a kilowatt hour. So you're getting clean energy and you're saving money, or 8 cents a kilowatt, less than what you're currently paying. And we guarantee that price for the next 25 years, which Duke can never do. So it's a really good deal for people who have homes that have enough sunlight to get a significant amount of solar. Unfortunately, that's not allowed in North Carolina. Again, it's something that we would like to see passed, but right now Duke is fighting it. And so we're going to have to continue to try to get some of our less environmentally conscious state legislators to agree to change that rule.
So this is a question and a direct answer to Bill Malone. He says he's on the sierraclub.org site on the cell phone looking for the voter endorsement and not finding it. And Bill, what I suggest is cell phone screens don't cover the whole screen that the actual laptop will, but you have to actually click twice. And you might explain that, but it's not on the home screen, it's on the
If you're on sierraclub.org, you're on the national website. It needs to be WNCSierraclub.org. Now, when you Google that, it's going to bring up the national one first. You've got to scroll down to find the Western North Carolina or WNCSierraclub.org. If you go to that one, the home screen will have, I think, it'll have a place where you click on political, and that will take you to another screen, and you click again and say, show me the endorsements, and it gives you the endorsements. So try that, and that should work on your phone or not. But if that doesn't work, let us know and we'll try to work with you. Or send Judy your email and we'll email it to you.
Okay, and we're also getting information that if you type in endorsements, sierraclub.org, you will also find it that way. So question, what is Duke's argument against third-party solar?
Well, right now Duke has a monopoly on energy production. And they have a pretty nice deal. They're guaranteed a 7% return on investment for all the investments they make in building power plants. And if we allow third-party solar, that eats into their customer base, and they can sell less electricity and don't need to build as much. They don't need to build new plants, and so that hurts their profit margins. So that is why, in my opinion, they oppose it.
Ken, could you just offer your opinion and projection of how you see the environment going and the carbon footprint coming down, offering hope, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I am optimistic that we're going to make some significant changes, particularly since this latest bill passed at the federal level. What's happening now is the cheapest form of new electricity generation is not coal. There'll never be another coal plant built in this country because it's totally uneconomical. And quite frankly, it's costing the utilities money to keep the ones they've got going. And so they're going to end up having to close those down for economic reasons. Second thing is, right now it's cheaper to put in a solar farm or a wind farm than it is to build even a gas-powered electric plant. So for new energy, and I was reading an article, I think today, that 75% of the new electric generation that came online, I think it's worldwide, maybe in the US, was renewable energy. So the economics are working in our favor to electrify, to move our energy grid to renewable energy. Now, what you got is how quickly we can get there. As I said, we're going to have to rework our transmission line systems to have the capacity to get it from where the renewable energy is to where it's needed in the bigger cities and where the major users are. So timing is a concern, but it's definitely going to happen. The question is, can we do it quickly enough? The other thing that I'm very optimistic about, 30% of our carbon emissions come from automobiles now. And if you just look at the number of read any announcement, Ford, GM, all of the car companies, Volvo, VW, all of these worldwide are rapidly transitioning to electric vehicles. They see that's the future. And quite frankly, we as consumers are anxious for that to happen because we saw what happened to gas prices. And, you know, I drive a plug-in hybrid and I buy gas maybe once every 3 months. And so, you know, I would drive by those rising gas prices and it didn't affect me personally. And people are recognizing that it's cheaper to operate an electric vehicle than it is a gas-powered vehicle. I've had mine for 5.5 years, and the only maintenance I've had in 5.5 years is rotating the tires. And if you think about your refrigerator, it runs on an electric motor. It runs 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and on that electric motor, and it runs for typically 15 years. And, you know, unless you've got a really old refrigerator, the electric motor doesn't need maintenance on that refrigerator. The same thing is true on your car, electric vehicle. That, you know, it's just much more efficient. There's lower maintenance with a $7,500 tax credit that will be available with all the new cars coming out. And of course, and you may have to pay more upfront, but over the loan ownership life of the car, when you figure in oil changes and maintenance and all of those things, it just it's cheaper than buying a gas powered car. And it's also right now there's upper end cars because of the chip shortage. It's the more expensive cars are what the automobile makers are making right now and selling because they make more money. But there are affordable options for new cars. Chevy Bolt, the Nissan Leaf are two good examples of cars that are under $30,000 that you can buy. I say today, all cars are, unfortunately, there's dealers are gouging us with markups, but certainly next year you'll be able to do that. And the other thing you can do is buy a used plug-in hybrid or a used car. Typically, people lease cars for 3 years. They roll off of lease after 3 years, and you can get a used Leaf, a used Bolt as soon as by next year you should be able to get those pretty cheap, under $20,000 for a 3-year-old car with limited mileage. And, so it's just going to happen. There's more and more of those kinds of cars that will be available over the next few years. And so there's options. Let me just say one last thing. And if you're hesitant to say, well, those used cars only have 125-mile range, and I go out of town occasionally. If you have more than one car, you use the other car to go out of town. If you're planning a cross-country trip next summer, you rent a car for that 2 weeks, and you're saving money every day for the rest of the year and saving the environment.
And I've heard, Ken, you might comment, people are afraid of not having adequate charging stations. Can you comment on that?
Yeah. Particularly if you're in a situation where you can put a home charger in your own garage, I put in a 240 volt charger. I think it cost me about $800 to buy it and have it installed because I'd have a line run, but I've got my own charging at that point. But with any new car, you'll get an app that will tell you where all the charging stations are for electric cars. And you have to do some planning on your route. And I would say if you're on interstates or going on major highways or metropolitan areas, you will have no trouble finding charging station. If you're doing a rural trip through the deep South and rural Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana, that's going to take a little bit more planning, and that could be a potential challenge. But again, there's been a huge amount of money allocated in these bills that Congress has passed under the infrastructure bill to put 500,000 more charging stations being built out over the next few years. So it takes some planning now, but I think if you talk to people that own electric cars, they'll tell you they have not had problems going anywhere they wanted to go. They just had to do some planning and maybe had to stop a little bit more frequently than when they normally would. But that's going to change very shortly in the next 2 to 3 years.
Well, Ken, we want to say thank you. That was very informative. And I want to turn to all of you that are looking at us and can just put up again the contact. We need each one of you to please take 1 or 2 or 3 or more shifts. Please go to our WNCSierraClub.org. And for early voting, please sign up. There are locations all the way around the county, and we will let you know where to get your endorsement cards. And you will have some instructions, and you'll have a big neck sign if you would like to wear that for COVID days, so people don't have to get near you, or you don't have to get near them if you choose to say Sierra Club, clean air, clean energy, and people certainly know what you're all about. And as Ken said, our cards are very, very effective for over the 1/3 population of unaffiliated folks, and also for Republicans. Some of my best conversations was with a bear hunter, and he certainly agreed with me that we needed clean air, clean water, keep his hunting safe. So you would be amazed at how much you have in common. Our next program, first Thursday of November, November 3rd, is about our wonderful diversity. Great, all creatures great and small, and to say, what can we do in terms of clean air, clean water, to keep them safe, to keep us diverse, to deal with climate change right here in our beloved mountains. So please, again, advance register for that. If you have questions, there are my contacts. And Ken, we want to thank you very much. So you guys have a good evening, and we'll look for you next week, next month.